So good afternoon, Saturday afternoon. The weekend's on extended weekend because of the holidays, so it's got me off by about a day or so. Good to see that we've got everybody. Hi, excuse me. Wow. Hi, Alexandria, and who else do we got here? SF 1987. Welcome back. Roger may join us in a moment. I was actually hoping to get him up as the second host, but the link I sent him isn't apparently working right now. So I have to go ahead and figure out what to do. I like that. Maybe Jim had to let the dogs out. Actually, that is so close to the truth. You would just find it amazing. My wife and her sister just came home. So she just took the dogs out just a moment ago. Obviously, we will start at 15 minutes past is when I'll go ahead and start the episode to give everybody a chance to discuss and all that good stuff as we're waiting to get in. Trying to think Star Trek wise, there's not a whole lot that has to do. Hey, Manley, welcome back. I overheard something this week that gave me some idea about maybe how dire the things are at Paramount that I hadn't really realized. I believe they're sitting on $14 billion of debt, which would explain a whole heck of a lot. I do know this much. The company that ended up being CBS when they remerged Paramount and CBS back together, originally it was Viacom, then they split it between CBS and Paramount, and then they merged it back together. Like either the very largest shareholder or somebody who calls the shots is a woman. And about 8 or 9 months ago, she came out and she told the folks at Paramount that she wanted to sell off the Paramount assets. Hey, David, nice to see you. Good morning or good afternoon. My time zones are all screwed up. So she gave them, she sent out the war drums. We need to sell Paramount. And so that started the discussions. It's got to a bunch of people. And I believe currently, it looks like maybe Skydance is going to buy Paramount. But no deal has been done yet, struck in gold. I think it's pretty close. But we've seen deals, major historical deals. I mean, Lotus and IBM walking away at the last minute from merging those two companies. And then, even and PC industry more also famously, Gateway and Compaq walking away from each other when it could have been, a transformative thing. Manly, you are so right. It is crazy. I think that the situation in streaming right now is somewhat critical. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, the big three, almost like the three networks, ABC, NBC, CBS. They handed cable its butt on a platter about 10 years ago, maybe 15, with people like myself and others that, cut the cord. We just shut off, no more $300 a month to Comcast. I can get what I need for $30 online. And it didn't take long for studios like Paramount and Cinemax, HBO, AMC, all these networks started looking at Disney, started looking at their properties that they had been previously just licensing to people like Netflix and Hulu so that they could be, Netflix and Hulu would have all of the infrastructure charges and, the studios just collect royalty. So it seemed like it was going to be, working pretty good for those three. So the studios jumped in, and the next thing you know, we had Paramount Plus, AMC Plus, HBO Plus. You get the general idea where that's going. Suddenly, we've got 15 major services instead of 3. And in the beginning, they didn't have a problem adding someone. Hold on one second here for a moment, folks. Sorry for that, but I'm trying to figure out why we are not getting Roger. He says that it tells him that the host won't let him in, and it's not asking me something. So bear with me. I'd rather deal with this now when it's okay. So sorry about that, guys. All right. So anyhow, fast forward. Disney, makes a series of unfortunately bad business decisions with their next phase of Marvel movies, and then the next thing Disney is, pruning its catalog on Disney Plus and rethinking that direction. And of course, Paramount's doing the same thing. They make a new Star Trek, like the Starfleet Academy series that they're working on. The reality of the situation is, unfortunately, they're not going to get any new subscribers because guess what? The Star Trek fans that like that stuff were already subscribing. So they're spending money and getting nothing. And they don't want to continue to do that. So that's why Paramount's up for sale. My guess is inevitably they will license out their content back to people like Netflix, Hulu, stuff like that. I don't really see them trying to mount competitors for those services, but who knows? Okay, what do we got here? Looking forward to do a watch along to my favorite episode of Muck Time. Oh, yep, we will most certainly be doing that one. I'm sort of stuck in the first season right now for most of you guys because of the fact that the freebie link that I give you at watch.trek-world.com to Pluto. Right now, Pluto only has season 1 up. However, we're going to be busy probably with season 1 for at least another couple months. So by that time, we'll find another link, or I'll just have to be pointing people towards Tubi or something like that. Obviously, the share that we'll be doing on the screen for the episode here this afternoon will still work no matter what we're connected to. So we should be good. Hey, Janet, nice to see you there. I think that I neglected you a moment ago. I saw you pop up and I meant to say hello and didn't act on my impulse. Sorry about that. Okay, so there we go. I think that's it as far as the Paramount Skydance thing. If you've been following the channel, then you know that I've been involved and contacted by people involved in the 3-foot model scenario. And I've been talking to a lot of people, and there's things we know about the model. The things I know now about how it ended up in the storage unit, when it ended up in the storage unit, things of that nature, paint a fascinating tale. But it's a tale that needs to be told in pieces. Because among other things, I have to double and triple check everything before I go along, because I can't tell you the number of times I was dead certain that this is what happened, only to find a piece of information that didn't back that claim. And so therefore, you erase the clue and you go down a different track. Hey, Pop Culture, nice to see you at this afternoon. So the video I posted a couple days ago or yesterday, I think it's the weekend's been a blur to me, is on the legal statutes governing who actually owned the model the night that it came down off eBay and then was taken subsequently to Heritage Auctions. And I recommend the video if you haven't seen it. It's about 20 minutes long. It gets really specific, but I will tell you that it's under California law 100% that night. The buyers owned the model and not Rod, not Paramount, Desilu, or anybody else. And that happened that way because proper steps were not taken when the model disappeared in the 1970s. They never reported it stolen. They talked about it all the time being stolen, but never filed a stolen item report. And then Gene sent the letter to Jeffrey Katzenberg that we're all aware of, which in it specifically said, I loaned it out to them. And so with that statement, it's not stolen, it was loaned. And believe it or not, if you loan something to somebody and you don't have a contract to say when they get it back, it's an open-end loan. It never has to come back. But anyhow, long story. We'll be following that one as we go along. in the near future. Next up will be whose name the unit was in, what that family looked like, how it ended up there, when it ended up there. And then after that, I got to try to trace back in time from the time it first showed up in the storage unit further back to see if we can begin to piece together the mystery of who did John Pavel give it to, or Pavel give it to. So we'll figure that out when the time comes. We're expecting Heritage's legal response by mid-July, because there's time limits on, you know, when you have to file your response to a lawsuit. So we're waiting for that to come back in. I'll jump right out to the Los Angeles courthouse like we did the last time and see what paperwork I can suck down. We are about 3 minutes from beginning this episode. So for those of you who've never joined us before, let me explain to you how this is going to work. I'm basically going to bring up a screen, and every 10 seconds, that screen is going to display a screenshot from the episode with no audio and a time code in the bottom corner, so that for those of you who are trying just to figure out where we are and you are watching it on a second device, the time code will tell you exactly how to connect with us, or where we may not be impacted by the commercials that like Pluto has. So we'll get a little bit disconnected on the Pluto stream, and what I'm doing as time goes on because of the commercial breaks. Pluto you can get to by typing watch.trek-world.com. If it asks you to join up or whatever, you can say no, guest, or whatever, and it'll take you to the episode automatically and allow you to watch it without having to pay any money for it. What you will be watching will be the remastered version, complete with CGI, because that's the way CBS likes to serve it up right now, unfortunately. And I think that's about it concerning that. If for whatever reason watch.trek-world.com does not resolve properly for you, I tested it before I went in, but if it's going to give you a hard time, you can go to pluto.com and then just log in, or not log in, just click on demand TV shows, Star Trek, and you will find the first season there, and you can select tomorrow was yesterday. What else? I know I'm forgetting something. I haven't seen Lester on yet, but he normally joins us for these. But my Canadian friends have pointed out for me that Pluto is in Canada, but they do not have, or did not have, last time I talked to anyone, Star Trek in the on-demand service. So that link will not necessarily, it'll take you to Pluto, but it won't take you to the episode if you're in Canada. You didn't do anything wrong. The link's okay. It's just unfortunately, geographically locked by region. And in that case, the only thing I'm aware of that you might be able to do is, check out Paramount Plus or possibly even Netflix. I know that internationally, Netflix carried the other Star Trek shows long after they disappeared in the United States due to the agreements that they had from Netflix, especially concerning Discovery. Netflix paid a significant amount of money up front in the original creation in the first season of Discovery, which basically gave them a piece of the pie and gave Paramount, at least for CBS, a guarantee that they had a partner that wasn't going to drop them overnight type of situation. So Netflix got international rights to Paramount Plus. Okay, Roger, I think something is wrong with the link. For those of you who are following along, my co-host is having an issue getting in. Keeps saying I'm not part of the broadcast. The host can see you in the chair. Yeah. It's telling him I'm not doing something, and maybe I'm not doing something, but I've never had to before. He normally just popped right up there. Anyhow, so I'm getting ready to go ahead and start that because we are right at it right now. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and share, and we're going to share a video, and we're going to go find that video right there. And oh, look at that, it shows up. Good thing it showed up. I wanted it to. I'm going to turn the sound off. There's no sound on it anyhow. And then away we go. I always say you have no idea how close to. I actually had lunch with my son And then, of course, I wasn't, after I filled up at the restaurant, I was forgetting I wouldn't be hungry. Surely I'd ate for the day. But yeah, I've had the munchies since I got back. Okay, so our friends on Tomorrow is Yesterday. Always was intrigued by this episode because, of course, it gave us our, I think the very first look at Earth history on Star Trek, from at least from first person. And it just absolutely amazed me. Captain Robert Christopher. It was a neat story. I just always, and there are actually, and I'm going to cheat. I have notes over here somewhere if I can find them in time. I love some of the lines that actually. I mean, Kirk got the one line and says, "All right, Colonel, the truth is I'm a little green man from Alpha Centauri. A beautiful place. You ought to see it." So it has some really interesting lines in here. It's one of those episodes, I think, that hits all the right spots when in Star Trek. I don't think that many people view it as like one of the best Star Treks ever made. But I guess if you obviously have the things that are the best and things that are the worst, but then maybe there's a third classification of things that are safe. Things that, it's 100% delivers everything you expected. Maybe it doesn't excel in something, but it doesn't, drop the ball on anything. This is one of those episodes. I think it's empty calorie junk food episode. I'm pretty happy with it over the years. It's one of the ones that I watched a few times before we started doing these watch parties. Okay, so an interesting thing here. There's mixed models in this, and the easiest way you can tell is there are lights on the 11-foot model. And when they show you a version of the model that doesn't have lights, then it's the 3-foot. I gave the real specifics in the 3-foot model shot library that you can check out on YouTube. I made that like 2 years ago, so my memory might be a little bit brain fogged over that. So I have to leave it at that at the moment. But I do remember that when I was doing my research on this one, that you could actually tell when the 11-foot model was being used simply by looking at the fact that it was lit up. Let's see what we got. Manly time travel plots in Trek often involve a lot of humor, except, of course, for City on the Edge. Yeah, you're right. I think City on the Edge of Forever took time travel really seriously. And then I think from that point on, definitely with the original cast, it stayed somewhat humorous. I mean, probably with the most visible one you can think of is The Voyage Home. The Voyage Home. And lots of humor in that. And it was a movie that did really, really well. It is, a lot of people have told me in the community here recently that it was their favorite Star Trek movie. And looking back over it, I can sort of see why they would feel that way, because it was probably the first Star Trek movie we had that appealed to a generally broad audience. It didn't have to be science fiction, didn't have to be science fiction or action. It could have been a family movie. It could have been any number of things, a comedy. So it really appealed to a lot of people. And I think that that movie probably brought us quite a few fans that I would now call our Gen 2 fans, since it came up in the 80s. But so, yeah, I think it's possible that it might have still caught us some fans really late in TOS's life cycle. I love the theme song. It's Alexandria. There's a girl on YouTube, a lady, forgive me, on YouTube, who does a video, and she plays all of the Star Trek themes from the beginning all the way up through Discovery and Picard and stuff like that on the violin. And as she's doing it, of course, as each theme changes, the CGI background or whatever she's in, changes to match whatever show that came from. She's exceptionally good. If you haven't seen it, I recommend looking at it to see what's going on there. She's really good, and music is haunting. And John, you're absolutely right. That's exactly where I was going to go next. Definitely, the original cast took time travel very seriously. Now, Deep Space Nine had fun with time travel. I mean, we had more was it trials and tribulations that was interesting. But the first time we saw time travel, I'm pretty sure was the riots, the sanctuary riots. Took them back to the period in time that is actually a lot closer to what we have today than we thought it would be when we watched it back in the 80s and 90s. And it took it pretty seriously. It was not a good time on Earth for folks to be on. So yeah, Deep Space Nine, I think, definitely was the first one that made us a little bit. Can you imagine what's going through Christopher's mind now as he's staring out the window and going, what in the world am I seeing? And because it's really interesting, because if you compare what he's seeing, if you compare his experience to the experience of, well, quite frankly, the Tic Tac UFOs that buzzed the Nimitz group that caused the government to come clean on whether or not there were such things, not as aliens, but whether or not there were such things as aerial phenomenon that we couldn't identify, and we know for a fact, however, was not ours or anybody that we know. And the reason I'm doing that is, normally when we get reports of sightings over the decades, they're usually pretty fuzzy reports. They really, it's a light or it's a blurred object. In World War II, we had the Foo Fighters out there. So I can't imagine what Christopher's response was looking at this, because he gets a beautiful shot that's looking at them. Manly, you just did. Exactly. Back in the 60s, UFOs were either saucers or cigars. Chris is seeing both together. You're absolutely right. It's hilarious. But he's seeing a degree of clarity that, in our existence, our people who have experience with wondering things, we never got to see. And of course, he's now passed through the looking glass. I think it's interesting that they actually had him beam in the standing position facing away from the camera. Because normally we've seen, like at the end of the Corbomite maneuver, they beamed over the officers, bent over, because the clearance in the roof of the Fesarius, or actually, no, not the Fesarius, the smaller ship that Baylock was in, was short. So we've seen position-dependent beaming poses and stuff before, but they beamed him from a seated position into a standing position, and they beamed him standing in the opposite direction. But they did it, I think, entirely to be able to do that reveal where he turns, that we just saw a few minutes ago. He turns over his shoulder and realizes that he's not in Kansas anymore. Jackie, good to see you again this week. Good. I'm glad you're actually familiar with her. It's really neat. I like her stuff. Alexandria, I'm just stepping backwards, guys, as we're watching this, just to see whether or not I've missed anything, since I'm having issues. Since Roger's having issues joining. Not his fault. I'm sure it's something I'm doing. But hey, all right. Nimoy has a cold, but he still sounds cool. And Nimoy would sound cool no matter what. I didn't love him. Okay, as we go along here, I'm just trying to think of other things that showed up. I haven't done the bloopers on this yet, but I do have notes. And that is, let's see, referred to. Interesting. So the first note that I had is that they refer to him as Captain Christopher throughout this entire episode. But in the end credits roll, you're going to see the credits actually credit him as Major Christopher, which is kind of interesting. The credits quite often were... I was surprised. Credits were assembled manually for each episode. You would think that you'd have a series of videos You got to be 45, 50 seconds of credits, minute credits, whatever it is. And that you would have, the same videos or the same key sequences and just put text over top of them. But that's not the way they did it. There's a gentleman that actually had the job of assembling each video in the editing booth. And that's why you can have two shots that appear to be identical. You can have two shots of Baylock in the videos. But if you screen grab and freeze frame those two shots, it becomes obvious when you compare them that they're two different frames of the same scene. They are not the same frame. And that was because they kept remaking the end credits. There's a gentleman that sent me a ton of information. I don't know if he still watches the channel because I haven't heard from him in a long time, but he sent me a ton of information. He'd actually gone to the trouble of isolating every scene in every credit ending. But it's huge. I mean, massive amount of time and effort that he put into it. And even he looked at it and went, this would take, a production crew probably to put this together in YouTube or in video production. So he sent me all of the information, put it up on submit.trek-world.com for me, and gave me his best wishes. And I've tried to figure out a way in vain so far to do a package based on what he gave me. But what he gave me has really given me insight into things I was not originally aware of. Alexander says, "What? That's a woman? An officer?" My favorite interaction in this episode. Yep. I thought the same thing, Jackie. I thought he probably should have been seated on the floor, but hey, we can forgive them little things here. That's interesting. When the F-104s are scrambled, two aircraft are shown taxiing on the Revenants, and they're armed with AIM-9 missiles under the wing stations. Yet the aircraft taking off is clean. So, and just in general things you guys are probably aware of, I try to do the bloopers and deep dives on each episode. I'm working my way, obviously, through season 1, trying to do them in close to production order. I put up a mega pack this past week that a lot of you seem to be very fond of. I got the idea from the fact that you guys liked it when I had the mega pack set up of the Sci-Fi Channel's videos, so that you didn't have to watch 80 some of them, that you could put it on for like an hour and just let it go from one to the other. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm bundling up the videos on the production continuity errors and stuff like that into longer 1 hour videos. There'll be about 8 of them, I guess, when we're done for the original series. I will continue to do the individuals each week, though, so that we can move on from that. And I've expanded the scope of the individuals, as some of you have been watching them, has probably seen, in that, like I'll call out at the beginning of the episode all of the original shots that were of the non-CGI original Enterprise, the 11-foot model in that particular episode. And I'm going to try to surface more production information in addition to the errata that I'm finding with the episodes. But the focus of the episodes and the focus of the titles will always continue to be bloopers, because that's what everybody comes searching for. But I intend to put just more things in there, because sometimes things look like a blooper and maybe they're not. They were an offshoot of things that happened behind the scene or script changes that happened while we were actually in production. Manley has chimed in again too. The episode did give Trek an opportunity to talk directly to the audience of the day rather than through your app. Yeah. Yep. This one, ironically, this one and Operation Annihilate. No. Forgive me. I'm having a miniature, a teeny tiny little aneurysm in the memory banks of my head. So David caught something. He said, well, it looks like he's actually wearing a silver cluster, which is Lieutenant Colonel. So that's interesting because of the fact, like I said, he's called Captain Christopher. He is credited as Major Christopher, but apparently is wearing a Lieutenant Colonel's rank. So I'm going to have a field. Thank you, David, for calling that out, because I'm not sure I would have caught that in my notes when I actually do this episode in the coming weeks. That's just crazy. I have no idea how how it got. Well, yeah, I do know how it got through. They really didn't have time to double check a lot of continuity stuff, and they just asked somebody from wardrobe to give them a current day Air Force officer's uniform, and they got a one with a cluster on it simply because the wardrobe people probably were not detail oriented enough to ask what rank do you want them to be. So we do have Roger, who has just joined us. Sorry, Roger, I am not 100% sure what was going on with being able to get you in with the link that I sent you. We'll have to experiment with that again. It just didn't behave the same way it did our previous times, and I generated new ones and tried it with you too. It didn't do any good. And I will tell you this much: I generated a link and tried to connect from my secondary device and had the same issue. So I'm thinking maybe there's something that's changed in the settings on the hosting software that I got to look into. And then for those of you who have not put the math together, Underdog is Roger. All right, let's see what we got. Does anybody notice the demonic statue behind Kirk? I never really noticed it before. Aztec, not demonic. Oh, you're talking about this little guy. Oh, you can't necessarily see my screen arrows. But I never really gave a whole lot of thought to the things that were on his on the shelves in his quarters. But he does seem to have quite a few different cultural things. And I am wondering, not I have wondered, but, Roddenberry clearly established, Picard's interest in archaeological culture information. We still have Paris and stuff like that, or we'll always have Paris. I can't help but wonder if maybe that was something he originally thought might have been part of Jim Kirk's basic character, that he was, he was somebody who studied or followed or was interested in that stuff in cultural, but I'm not sure. I believe the gold chest next to the statue is now at the Trek tour in Ticonderoga. And collection obsession. Thank you. I'm glad that the Pluto link worked. Something at least works today. The invention of the medical smock our friend McCoy is wearing. I'm almost certain when I do this video, when I do the deep dive on the video and the continuity stuff, I'm almost certain I'm going to find that this episode has him magically changing uniforms in the middle of the episode numerous times because of the fact that during the first season and maybe through afterwards, it's hard to tell because I haven't worked that far yet, they were fond of using the smock when he was in sickbay and using his regular uniform when he was not into sickbay or not in sickbay. But then they would always cut to him in the smock when they needed a close-up. So he would suddenly, have the smock appear in the transporter room or on the bridge and then disappear again. It's sort of like what happens to a small degree in the green wraparound that Jim wears occasionally. It tends to show up every now and then and disappear in the same episode with no apparent reasoning. Just checking back to see. So there's this guy on eBay, and I think he might be in Canada, and he's on Etsy as well. And I think he calls himself 3D Trek, but he specializes in making scale sets from the original series. So you can buy like the complete bridge set in pieces, stations at a time. And it's not cheap. It's like $170 a station or something like that to be in the proper scale, say, for the Mego dolls. But he actually also offers them down in scale for the little 4.5 inch dolls or what 4 3/4 inch dolls and stuff. And I saw something on one of the pages while I was doing research recently where he's gone in and he has made a 3D model of Stage 9 of the bridge sets and the Enterprise sets. And I have to admit that I was like tempted to spend money when I saw his bridge stuff. Matter of fact, first time I saw it, somebody sent me a link. He actually makes it also for like 12-inch tall dolls or action figures. And he had taken the 12-inch version, or the version for the 12-inch, and put a glass countertop on the top of it. It's a coffee table that is like the envy of anybody that I've ever seen. I was intrigued by that, but I may actually end up spending money on his Stage 9 things. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I'm surprised nobody else has done the set layouts in 3D printing to make models like that. I want to make sure I am not ignoring somebody. Okay. Let's see what we got here. All right, so I'm going to do some multitask here to see if there's anything else that I have on my little note list. So interesting. I missed something in the transporter link, and that's probably, in all honesty, because I'm not hearing the audio since we're watching just the screen print here for me anyhow. And he says, at the beginning of the episode, Kirk orders a transporter room to beam up Captain Christopher as an emergency. And Christopher, Kirk, he says, beam it up, emergency, and he rushes off to the transporter room. Now, in previous episodes, we've seen that it takes a little bit of time to get from the transporter room to the bridge. There was a good distance in Let That Be Your Last Battlefield that we saw that. But interestingly enough, Kirk actually arrives in the transporter room in time to watch Christopher fully materialize on the transporter pad, which implies that either he somehow got to the transporter room much faster than he expected, or they held Christopher in stasis before they rematerialized him. They did that in Wolf in the Fold, but there was no real discussion about doing that. It was an emergency beam out, so it may be just a time issue. Oh, Manley, you may have just put the final nail in my coffin, my friend. There is a YouTube channel called, I think, 13 Mockingbird Lane. For those of you, obviously, every Gen 1 person in the room knows we're talking about the Munsters. She makes 3D computer models, old TV series sets and walls, and then walks you through as if they were the real building. So I have to check that. I love that kind of stuff. X06 is working on doing 6 duty stations for card and data. That would be good. Yeah, and this guy, this 3D Trek guy or whatever, he also makes for the X06 scales, obviously. Good afternoon. I wish I could have joined today, but that's my fault for not joining Jim. No. It's probably my fault, Roger. I'm pretty sure there's something I'm ended up doing here, or a setting that was changed on our side somehow that I just need to get squared up. For those of you on the call that are patrons, do remember we will be switching at 4:15 when this ends. We will begin the patron call, the monthly patron video conference. That will be at the other link that you have been provided up to this point. It's not the same link that we're using here. And for those of you who are not in our patron call, I invite you to join us through Patreon and become a supporter of the channel. At this point, I mean, I wish I could tell you, I'm going to shower you with gifts and give you all these wonderful things. Right now, at this particular stage in the channel's life, it basically moves you into, like, I guess you could call it an inner circle. There's people that I talk to much more regularly because we do touch base twice a month on these patron calls, and they are like Zoom calls and not like live streams. And there's, the custom merchandise, like the polos are only available through that and everything. But I am really hoping that within this year, that I really have a serious plan to balance the Patreon site out, the offers from Patreon, to make it a two-way street. I appreciate the support that I get from folks that, between Patreon and YouTube, give me more than enough money to go to Not a whole lot more than enough, but it's my patrons and the advertising that actually did get me to go to Wonderfest this year, and it's going to allow me to go to a Star Trek convention in September. Without the channel and without the support of you guys, never would have happened. Very interesting underdog, especially how she handles the architecture issues, which could not exist in the real world. Okay, we have the actual multi-plane imaging machine used. Oh, that's right. You're right. I forgot all about that. That's going to be in here. It's this scene that he's talking about, and you're actually going to see the moviola. It was when I did the video about how they shot Star Trek. I ran across the fact that they did a scene in this episode in an editing room, and you're clearly going to see the moviola on like the right hand side of the screen, sort of like the bottom quarter. I think I found out that it was not it was not like just happened to be the moviola that they had available on the studio. I think it was actually in their editing room. I think it was actually somewhere else that they shot, like an on-location shoot. But I can't remember clearly what that is. But yes, it actually gives you an opportunity to see the machines that they actually did in fact use for editing these episodes every day. Seeing these images of the episode, this 80s tech room, very similar to Transporter Room, future reflects. Yes, definitely. There's an aesthetic in science fiction based on the what's we're looking for, based on the view of what the future holds in science fiction. We tend to find that the aesthetic in the 1960s is somewhat utilitarian and militaristic. It's more of a functional future, and we see that in the Andromeda Strain, and then of course stuff like this. In the 70s, that aesthetic changed. It became far more popular culture centric, because they were drawing off the growing popularity of the flower child movement and stuff like that. So when you look at the depicted future of things like Buck Rogers in the 25th century, I remember the dance scenes with Princess Ardala and stuff, and I mean, they might as well just shot the scenes on disco for us. They got their inspiration from what was happening in pop culture at the time. Additionally, Brother Mike states that the ADC guard shown is actually an SAC air guard, which is accurate for this episode of Air Defense Command. Interceptor groups were located in SAC air bases. Thank you. Robots were mandatory. Tweaky. I have not thought of that little. Wasn't even a droid. It was like a round digital clock that talked. I haven't thought about him in forever. I know there's a line that comes up. I love this guy. Look at this guy on the air track. He doesn't move at all the entire time he's been beamed aboard. Complete with gun drawn and everything. Never moved. It's absolutely amazing. I am so glad you found that, Alexandria. I know that you've shown an interest in science fiction that before your time. It's not a bad show. It's it really is. It's a classic story, because Buck Rogers goes all the way back to the Buster Keaton days with the Flash Gordon stuff. So yeah, but it was not that bad. It wasn't that bad. It was. We had some really good science fiction shows in the time, Star Trek's time and afterwards. Space 1999, definitely worth checking out if you haven't checked it out before. It is a little bit more hardcore science fiction based, though, than say the 1970s version of Battlestar Galactica, which was obviously inspired very heavily by Star Wars. Gosh, the rest of you can probably chime in some other stuff here, but there were other science fiction shows in the 1970s. that came out. Logan's Run had a brief run on network television, and of course, it was very much like the movie. There's the movieola. That's it right there. So they're in an editing room for somewhere. Like I said, I don't think that it is Desilu, but I could be mistaken. I really could be, because how many editing rooms would they have that they could stumble on and film at? Yes, I am. I will buy the One Company tricorder when it comes out, simply because I don't want to miss it while it's still at a normal price. My friend Roger, obviously Underdog here, he has the Wand Phaser and the Wand Communicator, and he was kind enough and gracious enough to bring them with him when we all met at Wonderfest, so that I could actually see and feel the heft and the just the general overall feel of the devices. And they're exceptionally impressive. But they're also exceptionally expensive in the aftermarket. So I know I definitely will grab it when it comes out, because I don't see myself necessarily paying the aftermarket prices for them to pick them up used or secondhand, because I already have the set that came from what is it, Artist Asylum, and the Diamond people. And yes, there's no comparing a tricorder phaser communicator from that and the Wands. Absolutely no comparison. The quality difference is completely off the chart. However, in the entire time I've owned my set, it's on a shelf up in my media room. In the entire time I've owned that set, I probably picked those items up maybe 5-6 times and experimented with them. So that tells me that my return on investment, the money is not there to make it worth spending. I mean, the phaser now will go for $1,000 easily if you're willing to wait 2 weeks to a month to sell it on eBay. But they're an incredible piece of equipment, and I definitely want to pick the one up just so I have it. There is a project that I'm working on that I think is another interesting thing. Hold on one second. I don't want to. People are bringing up some really good points, and especially for Alexandria. So let me see. I don't know what we got here. Been watching a 70s series called Star Maidens. Not great, but interesting aesthetic. I'm not familiar with that one. That'd be interesting, man. I have to check that out. UFO, yeah. UFO and Invaders. I think they were the same production company, I think. Yeah, I remember UFO. There was also a Project Blue Book series, but that might have been in the 1980s, I think. Star Lost, I completely forgot about that one, Manly. And I don't even remember 100% exactly what it's about, but I do remember watching it, and the name struck. It's one of those other things. I did a video that for members on YouTube, it's available now. Everybody else would get it in the next couple of weeks, but because I don't think it's out yet. But I did a video on a collectible, and it's one of those collectibles, sort of like the Star Lost thing is, that as soon as I saw it, it triggered the memory, and I remembered everything about it. Oh yeah, I had that. It was this. It did this. It was, completely. But it was something that I had not literally thought of in 40 years. So I love stumbling across things like that, and it usually gets triggered by a visual image, because of course there's not much scent related that we're doing with online stuff. So Star Lost, as soon as you said that, suddenly I'm seeing this. I'm seeing in my head the credits. So yeah, Felix, I think his last name Sia. It was pronounced. It was a foreign name. Somebody did spell it up there. I'm just trying to remember if I could say it right. But after reviewing the footage, he had silver bars as a Captain U.S. Air Force. It was blurry. Okay, cool. So maybe, all right, so that's a little bit better then. If they didn't actually find that, but the major things, that's good. Project Blue Book was, yes, and I liked that. I really, really liked Project Blue Book. And there was a recent version There was a recent version that starred the guy that played Littlefinger in the Game of Thrones. He also was from The Wire. He was a guy who ran for mayor of Baltimore, I think, and it told the stories of the interactions with the FBI and Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and it was one of the casualties of the pandemic. It just never picked up again after things were turned back on. A lot of studio stuff, unfortunately, was stopped and just never came back because of the costs involved in trying to retain the stars and the series. All the things necessary to produce it when you weren't really sure when you're going to be able to have people come back in the studio to work. Grateful Sulu got more screen time than he normally does in this one. Yeah, he did. I have an old flashlight that looks like a small phaser. It's really, I never thought about it the way you just said it, Alexander. But I think especially now knowing George as he's older, he had an exuberance that came through all the time in Star Trek when he was not seated behind the navigation console. I'm working on the blooper retrospective for Shore Leave, which will be up hopefully on Monday. And of course, there's a whole scene with him and the gun on the planet, and how he just completely, like a little kid, he just lights up because he apparently collects firearms, ancient firearms. And I mean, he's got like a childlike glee when he finds a police special 6-shooter that fires 7 shots, by the way, but I'll get into that in the video. But anyhow, yeah, he has that, and so yeah, I think you keyed onto it. I never really picked up just on being funny, but whenever they give him something specific, whether it is the sword, which they learn never to do again, or the gun or something, he really did seem to have like an infectious happiness about what he got to do. The flight suit is a CEU 1P. Look at the guy still in the the guy still in the transporter room, still thunderstruck by everything. If you like Sulu and can find the most current run of Star Trek TOS comics, Sulu gets some interesting character development along with Scotty, Chekhov, Ahura, and Scotty. I'm assuming, Manly, you're talking about the IDW series. Although theoretically now they have the reprint rights to everything, so they can theoretically, I guess everything is IDW. I like the comic book stuff that they've done in Star Trek, from Gold Key all the way up to current day. Those of you who've been on the channel for a long, long time, and I'll probably do another video on this in the near future, but the Eagle Moss company did a project where in approximately 160 volumes, their goal was to reprint every comic book ever made, comic strip ever made, into a hardback graphic novel, thick, heavy pages. Each volume was like $20, and they pretty much did get pretty much close to everything. I think the series ended up, when they bowed out during the pandemic at 160 volumes, they had made it up to just everything except the most current IDW stuff. I love that collection. It's incredible. It's next to impossible to get a complete set of, because the last year or so that Eagle Moss was struggling, they were shipping intermittently, and so a lot of people got stuck, didn't get the products that they had been charged for. And that actually happened to me. They still owe me like 2 or 3 things they were supposed to ship me after the fact and never did. I ended up acquiring them on eBay and paying a lot more for them, but at least it did allow me to complete the set. What else do we have? Anything else? What other Roddenberry TV series is to highlight? I really would It's crazy. I liked his pilots that never sold. I'm so glad you actually asked that to me, because it's one of those things that I don't really get a chance to talk much on this channel that does interest me, because I have that interest in that period stuff. But I mean, Spectre, I really wanted to see that as a TV show. Now, Genesis Earth and Planet Earth, or Earth 2 or whatever it was, Genesis 2. They were basically the same story, retold from slightly different toolings, because they actually were going to pick up the first one or whatever, but then the network wanted to add apes to it, and Roddenberry went crazy over that one and pulled the plug on that. So they were okay. Not quite as good, I think, as the Quester tapes would have been. So the other TV series that I really like are the ones he didn't make. I have seen Andromeda. I've seen it, and it's okay. It might be even more than okay, to be honest with you. I have not really sat down and gave it serious consideration, because of the fact that how it was produced so posthumously, so long after his death, that I am not 100% sure exactly what percentage of content really was his, or whether they just ran with a story outline treatment that he had stuffed in a drawer somewhere but never developed. And I'm sure possibly that the answer's out there. I just haven't looked at that right now. Motion Picture Toss comment. Need more if I can hunt them down. Yeah, they are the original ones were from Marvel, and they actually did pretty good. They had the one you got there probably is it. They actually released like a trade paperback that had all of the 6 issues, or how many number of issues it was that they spent just on the story that was Star Trek the Motion Picture. I swear the Air Guard reminds me so much of Martin Milner. Yeah, he does. He really does. I never really thought about that. Spell correct. CWU 1P. I'm terrible at spelling, and the spell checker, when it does find me, I mess the words up so often that it thinks that I'm trying to say another English word. So I'll type in my misspoken word that you would probably understand when you saw it, but then it gets spell checked and corrected into a different word, which doesn't make sense. I'm sure we have all encountered text with the word duck in it before. So I think you know where I'm coming from. Quester tapes. Little piece of trivia there, a lot of you may already know that about Quester tapes, is that the theme song for Kolchak the Night Stalker was written for the Quester tapes immediately after the original theme for the movie plays. The very first scene where you're introduced to the characters in like the lab or whatever, the whistling theme song from the Night Stalker is there. It did not get picked up, obviously, so when it came time to do Kolchak, the TV series, the music director, Mel Gill, I think, I might be mispronouncing his last name, it was his music, so he just used that in Kolchak. So it was Gene Roddenberry that was responsible for the creation of that theme, because he paid Mel to write it for Quester tapes, but then it didn't get used, and Mel reused it for Kolchak. And you've got you got your 6. Man, there is so much truth to the whole 6 degrees of separation thing in the world. I have both the Master, Replicas, Tricorder, Phaser, and Communicator. Wow. I've not seen any of the Master stuff. I know it has gotten really, really good reviews. Everybody liked it. For those of you who wish to see a new Trek movie in TNG style, there's a newish video game called Resurgence. If you like 9 Day Black Bean. I actually think I have that on a wish list. I don't know if it's out yet, because I lost track of it. And they're having a Steam sale too, so I might go back and check that. Also, I mean, I got to give a shout out to Star Trek Online. It does a really, really good job of integrating story with gameplay. I played it for years and years ago, for a long time. It's like a brand new Star Trek movie. Nice. I'm old. We are all old. The theme by Gil Mel is one of the best I think so too. Yeah. And look, Alexandria asked even before I mentioned Star Trek Online. There she is. She said, "Yeah, anybody play Star Trek Online?" The last time I played it was about 2.5 years ago. I still have it on my Steam Deck and, of course, on PlayStation and stuff like that. And I've spent a lot of time with it and absolutely loved it. So I really do need to get back into it again. The problem I have right now is that in these last 2 years that are leading me up to retirement, I have, the real world during the day, and then this channel and the research and just talking to people related to this channel is every night. So I don't have a whole lot of spare time that are not directly relatable to something that's channel specific. But I'm telling you what, when the dinner bell rings and I retire, I'm Star Trek Online and some of the other stuff I'm going to really start to look forward to, because that's going to free up a significant chunk of the time that I'm using during the day that I'm currently don't have available. Why do I suspect someone at the top? I've often wondered about that whole, temporal investigation thing, because keep in mind that they actually acknowledged in Deep Space Nine, I think, what a habitual offender James T. Kirk was in messing around with timelines. So they made a direct reference to the fact that they had an issue with dealing with his problems. But we never saw that in the original show, which leads me to believe that it was that, unlike in later television series where they had to expose themselves to the current timeline people to explain what was going on, it appears to me like, hey, they were able to actually make whatever adjustments they needed to make without having to expose themselves to anyone in Starfleet. Thus, we never saw any sign that they were there. It's a YouTube channel where a guy creates an episode out of each Trek Online. He does a very good job, which allows me, a non-gamer, to enjoy the plots. I'll have to check that out. I'm amazed at how people make movies out of games. Something like that, I think, would be fairly easy to do, because he can just record the gameplay footage, edit the way he wants to. But I think the first time I noticed that, and to this day I'm still mystified, people make music videos and movies using The Sims. And I mean, like a lot of people, I played The Sims since it first was released back in like 2000 or whatever. And I'm pretty familiar with the game. I have no idea how in the world I would get them to do the things that they do in those videos. Like, you don't seem to have that degree of control over the characters, but it doesn't seem to stop them. I'm a non-gamer too at the moment. Roger, you and me both, as the gamer thing. I will tell you this much. I bought a Steam Deck when they were first announced from Valve about 2 years ago. And for those of you who don't know, Steam Deck is basically, it's a portable IBM PC. So it's a portable gaming PC. Very, very, very low powered. I mean, you're not going to set any world records in speed or anything like that with it. But everything about it is designed to capitalize on the specific hardware that it's built on. So you can download something like Star Trek Online or Diablo 4 or one of the new AAA games, and you can actually play those games on that Steam Deck at high quality. And so I found that the Steam Deck has allowed me to return to gaming periodically, because I can, it has a sleep function. I press the button, it goes to sleep. When you pick it up again, press the button, it picks up right where I left off, even if I'm in the middle of like an instance or something like that. So it's actually allowed me to pop in and out of the games on a much more casual basis, to allow me to enjoy some games again, because I was big into computer games, like probably a lot of us were years ago. And they would suck out a significant amount of your daily life. Hello, temporal investigations. I'd like to report a suspicious man in a yellow uniform and one with pointy ears. Not again. Yeah. I don't think this episode's rules of time travel with the ability to travel back further into a reset, including the pilot, has been used ever again in... I'm thinking, Michael, you're probably right. I'm wondering about Star Trek 4. I need to think back of that. I don't know, and whatever reset it was, if it was a reset, so I'm wondering if they actually do come back in to the current time or their time before they, in the instant before they left or something. I'm not sure. You're right. I don't think they've ever done a reset type of thing in Star Trek since then. And I can see why. If I can see why they probably haven't, and that is, of course, that's a very dangerous tool to give a television show with or a crew with. It just would create all sorts of problems with canon, and we've known how people think about canon. So, David, Michael, have you seen Star Trek Prodigy? They actually reference toss and do a reset of time, or do a rest of time. Only got a few episodes before it was canceled off Star Trek. It is now on Netflix. I think season 2 just posted on Netflix this week. I have not had a chance to watch it yet. It was very highly recommended to me by you guys online from day one, and I do want to watch it. Maybe I'll binge it, between now and the Star Trek convention in September, because I enjoyed Lower Decks too. I mean, I like, because of the Easter eggs and the things they threw into it. It's cotton candy. It wasn't. It's not designed to be something with the emotional depth and weight of Next Generation or something like that. But yeah, I love the little Easter eggs that they work in and out of it. And I mean, I know they did the same thing with Prodigy. Okay, well, we have reached the end of our little presentation there, with the Desilu logo, or actually that's the NBC logo, I think, right there, that's trying to form. So I think that's pretty much it for today. We will be doing another one of these in 2 weeks from today. So keep an eye open for the live stream to be scheduled. I'm not the best person in the world at scheduling the live stream immediately. They usually show up like a day or 2 or 3 days before. So for those of you who need to make plans to make sure you want to make sure you're home at the right time or whatever, you can usually pretty much count on the fact that it's every 2 weeks at 3 o'clock. And if I put the live stream out earlier, it'll be on your home screen for a lot longer, which is fine. It's just, I quite often just slips my mind with all the other editing that I'm doing, and then realize, oh, I still got to work on this one next. So Jim, what are you doing? So there is a Star Trek convention in Nashville from September 18th through the 20th. And I live in the area. So my wife and I are going to go. And ironically, when it first started, when we first made the decision to go, my thought was, man, this is going to be the cheapest convention I can ever get to, because I'm just going to go pay for a day pass, walk through the dealer's room, listen to people, come home at night, like I was having a neat time. Then my wife and I attended Wonderfest, which was the first thing I'd attended in 40 years. And just fell in love with the whole convention experience. So all the money I thought I was going to save, I'm not going to save, because I went ahead and actually rented a small suite, too small to be really called a suite, but they call it that. But anyhow, we're going to be actually staying at the hotel those 3 days that the Star Trek convention is there. They just announced they're going to have Spock from Strange New Worlds, Christine Chapel, Saru from Discovery, quite a few people. It's the Trek to Nashville convention, and it's the traveling convention. The creation has been doing Trek to, Trek to Boston, Treks to Tampa, or whatever. It's a traveling, lighter version of the Las Vegas convention. All right, folks, I think I'm going to go ahead. We're about 5 minutes early. It's got 4:10, so we're probably going to go ahead and get ready to sign everybody off. But I'm going to watch the questions here for just a few more minutes in case anybody has any last-minute questions that came up. I don't necessarily want to lose the time because we didn't use it. Okay, see you in a few moments, Roger, on the other one. And we're going to see if there's anything else that comes through. All right, I think that's probably it. We got a few people dropping off, so thank you everybody for your time. As usual, I have had a wonderful time watching and reminiscing about Star Trek with you, and I am really, really looking forward to the next 2 weeks. This is I like it. I like it. That's all there is to it. So, all right, guys, I will talk to you all later. Live long and prosper. Take care of yourself, and we will definitely see you again in the near future. Bye bye.